So I'm Veronica Polanco, and I am what I call a hybrid storyteller. Essentially, that just means I love to combine different mediums, but at the end of the day, what I love to do is tell stories. So I use writing, art, I write software for work, and I dance. So a lot of different things. And I'm always training. So I'm always training as if I'm about to, I don't even know, like have my big Rocky moment or something. Forever training. So I'm taking a drawing class right now. I'm training at a dance company. Um, yeah, I don't know. My partner laughs that I don't know, I take it so seriously. I'm just like, you never know. I could still become a better storyteller.
I really like the image though of Rocky needing to draw something in like the ring,
Yeah.
or dance. I like the seriousness in which you train for life. I don't know you personally. I stumbled upon your writing through like the Dominicans Latino
Oh
Substack
no.
algorithm,
Yeah.
um, and was so happy to discover it. I also get the vibe, and no, correct me if I'm wrong, that writing in this way and expressing it in this way is like a fairly new endeavor.
Mm. Do you mean writing as in sharing it with others?
Correct.
Yes, I've written my whole life. I started writing when I was 9, journaling. Well, really for school, because you had to maintain, like, keep a journal and make up stories, and that's what I would do. And then after that, I just never stopped. So I would be found, like, my parents would tell me to put my journal away at dinner. Like, I would bring it everywhere. And I'm still known as that, as with my friends. Like, they have a picture of me journaling at the club or journaling at random spots. But to your point, like, it was only until a couple years ago that I finally even let anyone, I'm talking like a family member, a significant other, like a friend, a close friend, even read any of my writing. And Substack has been a big change for that, is because I finally had people reading my writing, which is different.
And what was the click? Like what changed in you? Because I imagine there's a lot of people listening who write and write and write and write. And so what clicks to be like, no, you should read this. Everyone should read this. I don't care who reads this.
Yeah. It's funny because even if I didn't share my writing, I would always, and I always say, like, even if I don't write, if I just stopped, I would still write in my head. I would still talk to like my fake, I don't know, audience, people, friends, and I would probably be bothering my friends at dinner with the same topics I'm not writing about. So that I don't think could ever stop. But like you, I mean, there was like two things. One was a deep desire to be an artist, express myself. I was one of those people that was like a secret artist,
Mm.
or a shadow artist, however you look at it. And oftentimes I think those people like me, you almost want to call yourself an artist, but you don't actually want to make art. Like a lot of people like call themselves a writer, but they don't really want to actually sit down and write. So it was doing that switch of like, that you want to do this. Like, that if you turn 50, 60, 70, and you don't ever share your writing in some way, shape, or form, you're going to regret it. And so I finally just started slowly. I started with a shitty poem I got published in 2020. Um, I say shitty because I could truly just wrote a few words, like never revised it. I don't know. I didn't put my heart into it. Um, and then little by little, I would start like letting people read a paragraph of a reflection, and then just kind of dipping my toes in. So it wasn't like one big moment. It was more of, okay, fine, I'll let you read this little reflection. And then it turned into, okay, I'll let you read my diary, or I'll let you read essays that I've written.
And what has been the feedback, and has it shaped the way you write? Like, are you now more interested in a specific thing or specific style? Yeah.
Hmm. I would say, yeah, the feedback has been one of the reasons why I finally started doing it and why I love doing it. It's been connection, right? Like it's it's like when I read your words and I feel less alone. The biggest feedback I get random people texting me, emailing me, being like, "Oh my gosh, I could have written this myself," or "You put into words what I've been feeling." And I don't know, I feel like I was put on this earth to mirror people, especially the parts of us that we tend to not show to others. I I love those parts. I love those like messy, ugly, like the neurotic, the parts of us that like if someone like saw, like when you're talking to a fake person in the shower because you're fighting, and if someone were to see that, like you would almost be embarrassed. Like that's the part I love, and I love putting that into writing. And the biggest reaction I've gotten is, "Oh, that's me," or "Did I write that?" And that's what makes me feel less alone because I'm like, "Oh, other people feel the same way." And then I like the idea of making other people feel like they're not walking through this life alone.
So you're out here journaling in the club. My question to you is journaling writing, or do you now see that there is a distinction between journaling and then writing in quotation marks, like, or are they all the same?
Yeah. There's so many different types of writing, like what you would consider art. One of my favorite lines I've heard is write like no one's gonna read it and edit like everyone's gonna read it.
Mhm.
And what I like about journaling as a way to explore certain topics and to explore your own subconscious, like things that are going to seep into your writing anyway, is technically speaking, you're not expecting anyone to read that. I don't journal expecting anyone to read my journals. And even on the series or column I have called Don't Read My Diary, when I do show my journals, that's from stuff I've written a while ago because of that. I don't want it to be anything that I've kind of subconsciously started writing thinking other people are going to read it. But I think that's, to me, is art. And I'll never forget stumbling upon this artist in France. Her name is Nikki de Saint Falle. I'm going to mess that up. But she had this beautiful artwork. It was scribbles, and then it was basically her diary. And it read something like, "Dear diary, I don't know why I keep choosing men like my father." Like all this stuff that normally you would either one want to talk to like a private friend about, your therapist, like you don't really want to showcase that to the world. And I remember being like, holy shit, this is art, because that's the part I like. That's what I find artistic about people, their unedited stuff. So I would say journaling is not quite capital W writing, but I do think that's what ultimately turns into writing. And I do think it is one aspect of it, because without it, we wouldn't have all these archives. We wouldn't be able to archive history. We wouldn't be able to make art of it, because I think a journal by itself is art, because tends to be some of our rawest forms, I would say.
So I have this thing of sometimes going back to a journal and reading it from the past.
Ooh.
And you do this? You don't? You
Oh,
maybe?
I do. Do you
Yeah,
cringe?
yeah. I don't cringe as much as I
Really?
find that I have been asking the same questions and dealing with the same sufferings forever.
Yeah.
Uh, like I had a therapy session not too long ago. Maybe it was long. It was like 5 months ago, 6 months ago, and he said, my therapist, I don't know what his technique is, but he has this unbelievable way of taking notes.
Mm.
And he says, a year ago, well, he can like transcribe for you any session we've ever had. He can be like, okay, so this is what we talked about, and this is what you said. And he said, a year ago, we hadn't spoken in a year. He said, a year ago to this day, you called me and this is what you said. And it was everything that I was going to say that day. Like
Oof.
everything was the same. And I was like, well, that's fucking pointless. Um, and so I say that I share that to say, when I go back to old journals, I'm like, I'm just in the same. And it takes time. It takes time and effort to break out of our thought patterns, our wounds,
Oh,
our
yeah.
questions, to me, it's questions. Like I'm always asking the same question, how do I dissolve more? How do I melt? How do I make it more us, less me? How do I grasp less? How do I be less clingy? And so my question to you is, have you noticed that your journals are actually of hella evolving? You're like actually
Mm.
things out, or are they living in that same question? And if so, what are your questions?
Yeah. Do you find yourself feeling impatient with that, or what's the feeling?
You
Do you
mean
know
when I go back and I'm like, look, here you are
the
again.
same? Yeah.
Yeah, I have a hard time eating it with softness. So yeah, I think there is an impatience. I think there's a judgment. I think there's a get over your shit, like just fucking figure it out kind of energy. And in the best moments, it's like, well, this is how long it takes to this is life. Like it takes a long
Yeah.
time to do or become anything beautiful, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I I would say I'll answer your question, then I have a thought too, but I absolutely have the same thoughts over and over. I call it our neuroses. It would I think that's what makes it embarrassing, and I've heard this from a lot of people of, "Oh, I've been stuck on the same person," or "I've been dealing with the same thing about my mom forever." And that's what tends to come up on the page. And then if you notice, oftentimes it's not just that the entry compared to a previous one is repetitive. It's even within the entry, you're kind of saying the same shit, like when you write or when you're contemplating. Um, and I definitely also find myself I I would say I used to find myself feeling embarrassed, or what I call cringiness around like this is so embarrassing. Like how my themes were a lot around my family, um, and our specific struggles, a lot about my relationship, my romantic relationships, and my anxious attachments. And I I would say it wasn't until I started finally like putting all of this into writing and sharing it that when I would find other people saying like, "Oh wait, I have those same obsessive sort of thoughts," that I started, I don't know, like I think being able to evolve a little bit more. But I'm not gonna lie to you. What I was gonna say was I don't know if it ever evolves. I always joke that I was born a little philosopher because I used to be really afraid of death when I was 4. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Like I'm talking like terrified of death. So in a way, I've been contemplating life and death and love since I was 4. And I still find myself to this day contemplating life and death and love. And I'm like, oh, so you just haven't changed in decades.
It's it's not I don't think it is cringe. Like I think it takes a long time. Long time things take longer than we imagine and conceive, and we have been so convinced by modern day culture and social media and internet uh, that and product that speed is the way. But things take so much time and effort and pondering and journaling and exploring. You have to explore the wound so many times until you realize, you know, why it stings the way it does and why you keep poking it the way it does, you know? And then eventually you sort of let go of the poking and you let it become a scar. And then you need to ponder the scar and appreciate that. And I think that takes time. So from the outside view, I would say like to those many of us who are writing the same thing and asking the same
Yeah.
question is very natural. You know, I do say this to artists. I think all artists are asking one overarching question or desire. That's what
Mm.
all their art is filtered through. Um, you know, for me, for a
Interesting.
long time, it was why do I do the thing I know is wrong for me, but do it anyway?
Mm.
This has sort of been the overarching thing of a lot of the things I make. And now it's become a more sort of social question. Why do we do the thing we know is wrong for us, but we do it anyway?
Ooh, that's one of the juiciest questions. I love that question.
And that is the question of my art. Like, and finding my question has been so nourishing because I can filter my art through that.
Mm. I love that. I wonder if my question would be
Yeah, what's your question?
I my immediate reaction was what's the truth? I don't even believe in the truth necessarily, but
What
I've
is the
oh
truth or what is truth? Because those are different.
yeah, maybe what is truth? Because that's what I've thought about a lot since I was young. And if you and I were to meet at the club or whatever, I
Internal.
wonder, I'm curious if you struggle with this because okay, the usual I always joke, I'm a software engineer, so I can't help but bring math into everything, but I always joke like there's a 30% chance someone's gonna be like, "What do you do?" And I don't know, like very predictable conversations anywhere you go, even at the club. And I've always struggled with that because of what you were talking about, because we would get into these conversations that I would find a little bit boring, a little bit shallow, which are fine. They kind of have to happen. And then my secret is that maybe this isn't my question, or this is almost my desire, is I would want to know what the heck is in those journals that you went back. I have a desire to know what, when you went back and were about to say the same thing to your therapist, what is that thing? And I want to know that for everyone. And I think I'm secretly obsessed with this idea of, I don't know, that's what makes someone the most beautiful, the most interesting to me. But I also understand why someone would be like, absolutely not. I feel naked when I talk about that with people. But that to me would be truth, or Chris's truth. And I would give two shits about what you do, unless it somehow feeds into, some truth. But I don't, so I don't know if it makes us kind of intense, but I love that you went back and said the same thing to your therapist, because that's exactly what I find interesting.
You brought it up. You said earlier, I write software. And so what is the relationship between, if there is any, there doesn't have to be, between writing software and writing words? Or like, is there any?
Besides it, they both are torturous.
Yeah.
I'm just a masochist is what it is. They're both really hard. That is something I am sure of. I don't think I ever. You talked about what the difference is between journaling and writing. I think journaling is easy. I think writing is harder. And I think that way about software, because every time you sit down, you have a vision of what you want to do, what you want to make. And there are a lot of ways to get there. And similar to writing, you have to design something and think about how you're going to maintain it, which is a little bit maybe different from writing. I don't know if you necessarily write software. I said I make software using code. I would say like a lot of the time, like writing, is spent in the logic. So you have to think through like, how is all of this going to communicate to each other? And that, I think, a lot of writers spend their time with outlining and things like that with the logic. But yeah, mainly that they're just both hard. I don't know why I tend to choose things that are masochists, like I that are just difficult for me, but
I know nothing about sort of software and coding other than it kind of is the backbone in which we're having this conversation, which in
yeah.
so many things we are involved in now, and these little things these little life forms in our pockets, and that we hold in our hands, our phones. But I am a Buddhist by nature, and I love the way the Dharma says the way you do one thing is the way you do anything. So the way you drink water is the way you love.
Yeah.
The way you consume a salad is the way you sort of care for your mother. And so I imagine in this knowing many languages, literally, many languages, you also know like a language that is beyond, like matrixy, that there is a way in which you treat that you also treat your creative process.
Yeah, I could see that. I would say software, so my experience is unique in that I actually was in business for 7, 8 years. I started off my career in finance in a like very male dominated space. I was in investment management, and then I went into sales at Google a year and a half and realized I don't like talking to people that much, like all day. And so I decided to go back to school and studied software for 4 years. And while I was working full time at Google, and then I finally became a software engineer. I still work at Google today. So it's interesting because it didn't always come natural to me, but I thought that when I originally signed up for this whole process, I thought that the reward was going to be like, oh, I get this engineering job and I get to make stuff for a living. I will say, like, I love to make stuff. The joy I get out of going from vision to something that came from my brain, I just can't even explain. It's like addicting. But what I ended up getting out of it was actually the process, to your point, around learning software. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. I can say that for sure. Having to break down what I thought was very magical things. I always thought software was magical. Like, how? I know that it can be broken down by zeros and ones, but how does it actually work? And understanding that and the layers that you have to learn, now I find myself giving that same like care and seriousness. And also you need like a level of not taking yourself seriously to everything. Like I'm with my dance, I've been training in dance. And so a lot of it is practicing turns for 30 minutes, which is dizzying and exhausting and kind of deflating, to be honest. Like you just feel like a horrible dancer while you're doing it. But that's the same thing I did when I drilled algorithms, which is one of the hardest things a software engineer ever has to do. And I think it fundamentally changed the way my brain works. Like now I'm kind of like, everything looks easier compared to software, I will say. Even when I'm down on myself, I'm like, oh, I really don't want to edit this essay for this submission. It still feels less hard than software, but it still feels like, well, this is just like when I was training my algorithms. Sometimes I have to like train just in sentences or grammar. So it's more my process of learning that I think it impacted.
Do the people at your job know you are, outside of sort of work, this creative beast, or is this something you keep separate? And I ask because I get brought into a lot of companies to like give a talk or hang out with, like the ERG or someone, and you always get these people who either do live these double lives in secret, or feel like they're too separate, like to be an artist or to be creative is so much different than this. We just had a woman on the Brown Enough podcast. It's one of my favorite episodes, actually, because she just says like, yo, your job can just be your job. Like, use it as that. It doesn't have to be your identity. Like, treat it as a job, and then outside of that, you have so many hours to be this explorative being who can show up in the world in the ways you want to show up. And yet, I think we are living in a world where we're so binary trapped. We're so binary neutered. We don't know how to be many things. And yet we are these many things. We don't know how to break our own box that we've been put in, that we put ourselves in. And so what is your relationship to that as you work in this sort of corporate setting, if any?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And it's so funny because I feel the exact same way. I always say, like, how come no one bats an eye when insert celebrity makes a tequila brand when they know nothing about tequila, or Bradley Cooper starts singing? It's almost like we think that only rich people and famous people can become many things. Like Rihanna went from singer to owning a lingerie business, and we're like, yep, that makes sense. Like, why does that make sense for her and not for us? But it's so funny because no matter what, like, I can know that logically, right? I can know about the ego and how its job is to keep track of who we are and who we want to be and how we want others to perceive us, and how it takes its job really seriously. And so it does get confused when it tries to hold two things, and it kind of feels like those are competing things. I struggled with that for so long, and I still do. I remember like one of those poems I kept coming back to, which I really only had like 2 lines, but it said, I'm afraid that if I laid all the pieces of me, I wouldn't make any sense. And I felt that way for so long, for so many identities that I hold. Like I remember being shy about when I started as an engineer, I was shy about my business side. I was like, but if I could be in sales, does that mean I'm a bad engineer? Could a good engineer, be someone who can also be in sales? Like that really broke my sort of ego. And then there was, okay, well, if I'm creative, a lot of people don't think engineers can be creative, but they're so creative. I think even more so because they have to stare at a screen all day. So they're like, get me out of here. And so a lot of them are dancers and painters. And I know someone who like trains in archery. It's so interesting. But like, I still struggle with that, right? Like, can I be an engineer, writer, dancer, painter? And that's not even getting into like good, like, can I be a good engineer and be a good dancer, right? All those things. But I think for me, it's going to be something that continually comes up, and I don't impose it on me. Other people will. And I've felt that way. Like I'm biracial, I'm Dominican. I mean, people try to take away my Black card, my Dominican card, any chance for any reason. I remember someone once came up to me and was like, oh, you were raised in the suburbs and you went to Cornell. You're not really Dominican. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't know it was that easy. But
wow.
So That's all to say, like, I I don't think it's crazy for someone to be struggling with all of their identities, but for me, lately, I just don't give a shit. Like, I'm just like, I'm not gonna waste any more time on that. I'm not gonna act as if those doubts aren't human because I still have them. Um, but I kind of just keep pushing now. I'm like, yep, this is who I am. But at work, I tell them I'm a writer. But I do sometimes try to keep it a little bit DL for some time.
Sometimes I'll go into spaces like yours, and we'll do even a
Mhm.
writing workshop, and it's or just a storytelling workshop, and it's also amazing to see, to everyone listening who spends a lot of time with people, actually ask them a question. Like when these
Mm,
people spend an hour together having a real conversation, they're always like, "I didn't know you. I didn't know you." You don't know them. You see them every single day, and you don't take the time to actually see them.
yeah,
Um, and this thing you said, I think you said, "I think my job is to be a mirror." Uh, and I think that's everyone's job. Like, that's what that's why I think we enter relationship, not just romantic ones. You're always in relationship. Everyone you ride the subway with, you're in relationship to them, uh, and they are mirrors to how you move through the world and who you are. And so it's to everyone listening who's writing, who's making, who's dancing. Uh, Try and see others and ask others about themselves, and like
yeah,
you will be quite surprised over and over. I think
yeah,
that's something I've learned from my parents. Like having the opportunity to make art where I got to re-meet my parents. I encourage every adult to meet their parents as people, not as parents, because
yes,
then you suddenly are like, oh my God, you're doing the best you can. You're just a person, you know, and that's everybody. Uh, what what are you writing right now that's exciting you or making you nervous? Like, is there a big thing you're going after, a big question you're asking? Yeah.
yeah. Wait, I have a quick question for you. Were you able to meet your parents' artists,
Meet
the inner artists within your parents?
I believe so. Yeah, I've made a lot of work about mainly about my father, but my mother as well. And so this is a literally allowed me to show up as like a journalist, like
Mm,
interview them. Not, I'm not your son. Like, ask them a question. Questions we never ask them when we're young. We never ask our parents these fucking questions.
yeah.
Um, and it has changed my relationship with them 100 times over. uh, we break out of that binary little box of parent child, and then
Mhm.
you're just like homies doing your best, like just
Yeah,
community members doing your best.
yeah,
And a couple of those community members, if you're lucky, gave you enough care to keep you alive. um,
great.
and so I have seen the artist in them. They are artists, and they have made things, and will continue to make. And yeah, so yes, I have.
That's awesome. That's so beautiful because I will say, you know how parents, you're right, when you don't ask them, they hold in so much, and a lot of people and don't ask. And I will say last year when my dad surprised me with becoming a paid subscriber of my Substack. I didn't even really know he read my Substack. He's not one to comment. I don't even know if he knows how. He's 72 now, but he doesn't really text me and say like, "Oh, I loved your piece." But next thing you know, I get a paid subscription. He's my first one. And so I post it on Substack. It goes viral. And I tell my dad, I'm like, "Oh, it went viral. Like everyone's so touched. Like fathers are really controversial." A lot of things came up for a lot of people, I will say. And I thought he would just laugh and say, "Oh, haha, of course, like I want to support you," which he did. Like he's like, "Of course, I love you. I want to support you." But then, and I don't know if like parents, I don't know if that's that generation where they just drop these bombs. You're like, I'm sorry, what? But he said, "You're living my dream." And I was like, "How so?" He's like, "By writing. I did always want to be a writer," or something like that. And I'm so close to this man, and I've never heard him say that. Sometimes I think our parents have like tucked away their dreams and just like have not visited them like for decades. And I remember being like really surprised, like, oh, and then because we talked about being a mirror and we talked about like the identities. I think those are my people, like the late bloomer artists, people who are afraid to admit they, secretly want to be a rock star or whatever in their own maybe space. Later that year for Christmas, my dad wrote me an essay, and it was his first essay he's ever written in English. And it was around, it was, the topic was around music, but the point is, I remember he was like, oh, I knew that this would be a gift for you because you love to write. And then I knew it was secretly a gift for him because he wants to write. So anyway, I just wanted to go back to like the idea of when we mirror each other. Like, I think for the people who are struggling with all these identities, maybe for my dad, it's like, I'm too old to do this now. I think by doing the thing, we show other people like, oh, I actually secretly want to be a writer too. And so that's been really special for that piece. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that quickly.
I love that so much. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. But to your question around like, what am I working on? I love the idea of interview your parents. I am finally doing that. I'll talk about what I'm most excited about, but I am finally interviewing both my parents because we lost the last grandparent generation recently, and I finally want to get down our stories. And I think that's really important before I lose a generation above me to write down our stories. So I'm really excited about that because often I don't think we fully write down their stories unless they're societally important or something or grand. And that I'm excited to do. But one thing that I'm excited about, and I say excited because I'm also nervous, is writing from a place that's not my higher self, which I kind of feel like you would get, right? Like it sounds like you operate, or you're able to at least go back to your higher self pretty often. And I like that part of me. I like that part of me that can say to my inner child, like, girl, I get it. You want to play. Or my insecure side, like, I know you're feeling insecure. She's probably like 12. Talk to her and kind of rein in my parts and like listen to all of them and care for them. But I'm kind of hyped to write about, like, right from the point of view of my ego or my most bitter, jealous self. Like these parts of us, like giving them their own voice in their right, especially when we're talking about creativity. I think those parts can come out. And I think the more they come out, the more they can be named, the more that they don't sabotage us, I would say. So I have this one essay I'm working on that is not written for my higher self. It's like angry and bitter and like bored of everything. And I'm nervous because I don't know what people are going to think. Oftentimes I write by the time I'm balanced and like well processed, well therapied, whatever it is. And so I'm kind of hyped to write from that point of view, from like the shittiest parts of me. And like piss people off and piss myself off. I don't know. I've explored too long like the heady, like almost like intellectual, spiritual. I love that stuff, but I kind of want to do some, like when SZA wrote I Want to Kill My Ex. At first I was like, oh, that's horrible. Like children are gonna listen to this. And then I'm like, oh, I get it.
And then you were like, I also want to kill my ex.
Well, it was more like I was like, oh, she's writing from this like hyperbolic, egoistic, angry, immature side of her. And that's kind of interesting, right? Like, of course, once she got everything settles in, she's like, no, my ex like really helped me become who I am or whatever. Like, and I love that too. But I think I live in that a lot. So I kind of want to go through my SZA phase.
Well, to write from what I'm going to just call higher self, lower self, good, shitty, I think is also a real trap of we've been sold that time is linear or that everything moves in an arrow. And I have come to live in a more circular way as of recently, or like to imagine the world in a circular way. And so you will never have a higher self unless you want to kill your ex, like unless you understand that, like if you have, to quote Socrates, like if you can kill a mosquito, you can kill a man. It's the same action with a different amount of force. Like, until you realize that, you're ordering from Amazon while the Amazon burns, like you're watching Chef's Table while hungry people are outside. Like until you can do that and conceive that, you are as close to quote Thich Nhat Hanh, like, call me by my true name. I'm the little girl on the boat who was just raped, and I'm the pirate who just raped her. Call me by my true
Mm,
name. Like, we're just one step away from the most vile or most angelic thing we can conceive of. Um,
yeah.
it's far more circular than it is arrow. There's not like bad me on the left side, far right, good side. It's like, no, they're all just one point.
But would you actually let yourself, especially you having engaged liberation, like would you let yourself right from that, let's call it bad self, and stay there? Because oftentimes I think that by the time we do talk about that part, we've already evolved, right? It's like, I remember when I was so angry at my ex, I wanted to kill him. But then over time, I realized, and then we're still writing from the point of view of and now, blah, 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 blah. Like, would you ever let yourself, especially knowing what your newsletter is about, let yourself just right from the point of view, like sit in that of like, yeah, no, I'm fucking pissed? Or do you feel pressure because of what you maybe represent to others to kind of tie it in a bow and be like, but now, it's all good. I forgave my parents, or.
It's a good question. I do have a rule that we share scars, not wounds.
Okay.
Um, I don't think wounds are meant for public, especially they can be unsafe for
Yeah.
for the container. Um, Scars, and if we're really good, we share from the rim of the wound, where the wound is healing,
Okay.
like where the healing is beginning and it's becoming a scar. That's if we're really good. There's a skill in there. There's a craft to that.
Okay.
Um, that is a sort of a rule I believe in as storytellers. I also come from like the Moth background, storytelling for performance.
Okay.
When you go to a Moth event and someone is telling something they're not ready to tell, it's painful. You feel like they're unsafe, and no audience wants to feel that way. And then the other sort of part of this is, I think I can live from that place. For me, it's in the work I'm making now, my sort of, not demons, but my, whatever we call lower, whatever we're calling this, not higher self, is so deeply related to jealousy. I started writing last night that, like, watching the Oscars is extremely hard for me. It always has been. I can't
Mm.
believe I haven't been nominated for one. Like, I can't believe not I have not, that the industry hasn't seen me the way I've seen myself. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard for me. It's very hard for me. And so I think I can be honest from that place. Like, I don't
Oh, that's so
struggle to be
good.
honest. Now, what Jeremy, my therapist, would say is there is a difference between an honesty that you are prepared to share is not vulnerability. It's performative vulnerability.
Mm.
The vulnerability that does the real work in this life is the stuff you're not prepared to share in the moment when it needs to be, given to others, your community, your friends, your lovers, um, the person who upset you on the street. When you have to speak up because someone betrayed someone, but you only do it at home because you write about it, but you didn't say it at the grocery store. Like, you didn't fight for justice in the moment. That's sort of the work I'm more interested in having lower self meet higher self, is in the
Mm.
moment before I can conceptualize it. Because if I can conceptualize it, it's already too late.
Yeah. I like that. And I think that goes back to the role of journaling. Maybe journaling is capturing it.
I mean, if you're doing it in the club, that's like so.
Well, uh, well, maybe journaling is capturing that sentiment. And then later, once it's more of a scar or closer, you can share it. So it's still as vulnerable because you were vulnerable in the moment, but maybe it's a little bit, you're able to, at least to your point, like take care of the audience a little bit more. But I do feel that, to your point, if you kind of could revisit that moment and you're not even able to tap into that vulnerability or that jealousy, that anger, then it's not as vulnerable. So I wonder if the role of journaling is more of capturing it, saving it, and then you can always go back. So then you're able to share your wounds with people without them being too raw. So that's a good point.
It's a
Huh.
dance.
I like the idea. Okay, so you talked about jealousy. Ooh, I love jealousy. I love, 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 love jealousy. And I don't know about you, like who would you say like your people are? Because right now I'm realizing my people are what I mentioned before, like the late bloomers. I'm talking about, I'm curious about the people. I've heard of this, like, oh, this person is too happy or like too something, and they like unfollow them on Instagram or something. Or if they see I don't know, they published a book, they're like, I'm not gonna buy it. I'm very curious about those people. And I I kind of want to write at some point what I envision, like I've never published like a book by myself. My first book, I would want it to be this. Now you're making me think, is this two in the wound? But I would play around with it. But I instead of writing the artist way, which is written almost from like a point of all the way at the end, like I'm a prolific artist, I have wisdom to embark after I've made 5,000 pieces of artwork. I want to write it from a place of in that middle, that messiness where you like have just gained your little wings, and you're flapping and you're cocky and annoying and bitter and can't watch the Oscars. I want to write from that place around creativity, because I think that's a lot of the place that many of us live in, right? Of like this feeling of, oh, like I can't believe it, this should be me. And I think those are my people, the people who are kind of like, I'm a writer, and then they go back and then maybe they stop writing for a couple of months, or they're shy to admit that they secretly want to be an artist.
I think you should write that. I don't know who my people are. Like I know they're there, but I don't know that I can define them because I can't often define myself. I'm in a real investigation of
Mm,
a dear friend of mine, Talsba Rose Chavez, said she said, I think she's an artist. We were having this conversation. I said, I
okay.
think you're an artist. She goes, I don't know that I'm an artist. I think I make things that people call artistic. Or like, what'd she say? I think she said, I participate in the world in ways that people call artistic.
That's
Um,
such an artist thing to say. I love it.
and I liked this so much. And I thought of Ram Dass, who always says, you will never be happy if you are who you think you are. And you will never be free if you are who you think you are. Um,
Say it again.
You will never be happy and you will never be free if you are who you think you are.
Ooh, that's good.
Because it is a trap. It is a trap to label yourself as a thing. It has closed the doors to so many other things. As soon
Yeah.
as you put yourself in the box, the box is one. And forever I have claimed this moniker as I am an artist. I make art. And other people have given me this moniker. And
Mhm.
lately I feel very like I just want to live. I'm not an artist. I don't know what
Yeah.
like I don't
Yeah.
I want no box. My only job is to dissolve, right? My only job is to let go. Um
Yeah.
and I want to operate in the world in whichever way I'm supposed to operate in the world that day. Uh
I
so I don't
like that. And it could end up making you more human too, because I would imagine if I was you, I would feel pressure to always be comforting.
That's an interesting thing. Yeah. With some of the art I make, yeah, for sure. Like,
Yeah.
um, there's some of that. As we get to wrap, any
Yeah.
last questions? Any last thoughts? Anything you want to tell the people?
Yeah. I I think my only call to everyone right now is just to write shit down. Actually write it down. Um, like when my grandma died, I found myself feeling so angry, and I thought I was angry because of the 5 stages of grief. Of course, I'm angry, right? She left me. But then once I realized, I don't know, the anger kind of remained. I realized I was actually upset because I lost one of the greatest storytellers of all time. Um, before I ever got a chance to write her stories down. And I was so angry, not at myself, but like even the generation above me, my dad and his siblings, of like, how dare you? Like, this is someone who she was just, I mean, you could listen to her talk forever, and she was a keeper of a lot of our history. And I regret that so much. And I see that happen a lot with our communities. And I met this man when I was in Utah last year. We were horseback riding, and he was taking us, and he owned the farm. And he asked me a question, and he didn't mean it in a snarky way. He just said, like, how long has your family been here? And I don't even know what I said to him. I think I lied. I don't know. I was just feeling a little like feisty, like none of your business, but very New York way. But he mentioned, his grandpa landed in Utah. He wanted to become a cow boy, like with cows, and then he ended up getting horses instead. And how I think his great grandpa wrote a book of everything, like when they arrived to the US, all the details. And that book's been passed on, and he knew so much about his history. And I remember feeling back to jealous of him. Like, how dare you know so much about your family history? And, I asked my mom, I'm like, oh, what was a question recently that they didn't even, or I asked my dad, like, how did my grandma and grandpa meet? He's like, I actually don't know, like, maybe at church. So that is kind of my call, is write it down. I don't know. I don't think we're ever going to regret it. And they say that by the time a generation cares about the generations above it, it's too late.
Mhm.
And I feel bad about that. I want to read the story about people's grandmas and why they were fierce, and I want to preserve our histories.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep writing, keep making, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, likewise. Ciao.
Gracias.
Bye.